Good evening and welcome to your health show. My name is Purity Museo. World Hemophilia Day is celebrated every April 17 and this year's theme is Access for All. Today we talk about hemophilia and we are going to look at some of the challenges that hemophilia patients go through as well as their caregivers. In studio we have some of them here as well as the caregivers, and let me first begin by welcoming them. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show. Hello everyone.
Hello.
Thank you. Also, I'll be joined by James Kago. James Kago is a hemophilia patient as well as treasurer at the Kenya Haemophilia Association. Please help me welcome James.
Thank you.
Hi James, how are you doing?
Purity.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
And of course, this year World Hemophilia Day is on a Sunday, and why not talk about hemophilia?
Thank you.
It's a rare disorder. Let's begin by defining what hemophilia is.
Thank you, Purity, and thank the parents and the patients for coming. Hemophilia is a bleeding disorder that is X chromosome linked, and therefore it passes from the mother to the sons. And because the mothers have two X's, it therefore doesn't manifest to them, and we say the mothers are carriers. The boys have one X, and that's where the clotting element is, and therefore when the X chromosome is affected, then they start bleeding. So you will manifest the boys. It will manifest more in boys than it will manifest in girls.
But do we have cases in girls?
Yes, it does. We do have cases where, for example, if I'm a hemophilia patient and I find another hemophilia carrier, a lady now, and we have a child, there's a possibility that they could get my X, which has hemophilia, and then the mother's X, which has hemophilia. That way, the girl will also become hemophilic.
It's clear that it's inherited,
yes,
right? So
yes.
What causes it?
Basically, it's inherited from family, or it passed through generations in terms of from the mother to the sons and that way.
Yeah.
But there are instances when we have had random cases happening within a family. In Kenya alone, hemophilia affects 1 in every 10,000. or 1 in every 5,000 males. So 1 in a population of 10,000, you'll find 1 hemophilia patient. So in a country like Kenya, where we have around 50 million people, we anticipate that we have at least 5,000 patients living with hemophilia. Unfortunately, Kenya Haemophilia Association, which is the organization tasked and recognized by the World Federation of Hemophilia as the patient organization, we've only been able to identify 700 or thereabout patients living with hemophilia in this country.
So there are over 4,000 out there.
So that's the main challenge, actually. Today, when we talk about access for all, what we mean is we have approximately 4,300 out there that are not receiving any care related to hemophilia, and yet they're hemophilia patients.
What's the challenge? Why is Kenya Haemophilia Association not able to get access to them?
So one of the biggest challenges, I'll basically possibly mention 4.
Yeah.
One of them is awareness among the population, the general population. So you find a lot of us who possibly have hemophilia tend to have a lot of disabilities or joints, bleeding into the joints. And therefore, most parents, instead of bringing out the children to go out and get tested, they actually hide them for lack of awareness.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Kenya Haemophilia Association is doing is to create that awareness so that they can bring out the children for testing. Number 2 is the inability to offer coagulation testing in major hospitals within the country. At the moment, Kenya Haemophilia Association, we have established 10 facilities within across the country. And I'll mention them so that patients who have these symptoms can actually go and get tested in those facilities. One is Kenyatta National Hospital. We have Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. We have Voi. We have Laikipia. We have Meru. We have Kisii. We have Mombasa Coast General Hospital. Now we are in Bungoma and Kakamega. And recently, we are now currently renovating the Garissa Clinic. So what it means that, therefore, is that we are now going into offering diagnostic capability to these 10 county referral hospitals to be able to diagnose hemophilia patients across the country. Number 3, I would say, is also lack of awareness among the healthcare workers. And you find that majority of them could have learned about hemophilia when they were in school, but they have never interacted with a hemophilia patient.
Yeah.
So that the moment, for example, I walk into, or any of these patients walk into a facility and they have a swollen knee, the first thing is to aspirate the knee. So they take a needle and remove the blood in the knee thinking that it is pus.
Yeah.
So the next thing that you will realize is that the bleeding does not stop. So, and the biggest challenge that we have as a country basically is the affordability or access to treatment products. To manage hemophilia, we have what we call factor concentrate. So we replace the missing clotting element in your body with an artificial factor 8.
And we'll be getting into that,
yes.
The factor, but you've mentioned a very important point, that lack of awareness even among the healthcare workers, so
yes.
that when a patient walks into a facility and they have a bleeding,
yes.
that is what will be addressed, and it may even be addressed in an appropriate way.
Right.
So let me talk with one of the caregivers. Maybe who is ready to go first? You please tell us your name, but my question would be, how did you have a son? I assume you have a son who is hemophilic.
Yes.
Maybe you can share with us your experience. How did you find out that actually it's hemophilia that your son had?
My name's Yudhefia Wanjiru. I have a son, 5 years old. I diagnosed his hemophilia when he was 6 months old. Yeah, he went for a clinic and just tested for la malaria. That applied for malaria.
Yeah.
He get bleeding the whole day.
Yeah.
We go for a test. Then he diagnosed with hemophilia.
At least you are lucky that there were facilities that could test for that and not respond, as James is saying, right? Okay, I'll be getting back to you.
Okay.
But James, let's first address the symptoms of hemophilia.
So the easiest and earliest symptoms that you'll see, and sorry I didn't say that I'm also a hemophilia patient. You realize a lot of patients, we diagnose them around that age that she's talking about, between 6 months all the way to 1 year, when they start crawling. So you'll see a lot of bleeds, especially on the wrists and around the knees when they start crawling, and also when they start teething. So you find when the teeth are coming out, they'll bleed slightly longer than a normal child. Sometimes even when you are carrying those kids, you know the way visitors come and they want to, throw the baby up and down a little bit. So you'll find they start having blisters around where the people were, holding the baby.
Yeah.
So once you notice those blisters, or when you realize that the kid is bleeding or swelling a lot, that could be an internal bleed. So what we recommend is that, and especially if you have also seen other, maybe your brothers having similar conditions, we recommend that you take the child for screening. So at the moment, it's available across those county facilities that I've talked about, but also Kenya Haemophilia Association, we are trying to support our patients for the initial testing because it's a bit costly, so we come in to support so that you are able to be tested and we cater for that cost.
So bleeding is the first sign.
Yes.
And what could go wrong if hemophilia is not early diagnosed?
The easiest and I would say is where you bleed a lot into the joints, and therefore your joints are not able to move, or they become immobile. So like for mine, before I was diagnosed to have hemophilia, although I was diagnosed a bit early, but then I had bled a lot in my elbows. So you find my hands could no longer stretch. And by the time, corrective assistance was being offered, that is physiotherapy, we didn't have the treatment products at that point. So a lot of children with hemophilia, you realize they'll also have a lot of deformities, sorry to say. And therefore you find we classify hemophilia as a disabling condition.
I want you to also share your experience, but before that, let me hear from the patients that are here. An older patient, you're ready to go? Please tell us your name and share with us your journey with hemophilia.
My name is Antonio Deck. I'm 29 years old, and my journey with hemophilia began when I was born, when I was 2 weeks old. So it was at this point when they cut the umbilical cord.
No, here you are informed.
I was informed. Actually, I grew up, then I found myself with the condition. So it is my mother who actually dealt with it during infancy and as I was growing up as a toddler. So when my umbilical cord was cut, it was oozing fresh blood, and like for a prolonged period of 2 weeks. So my mother, of course, was concerned, and that's when the diagnosis was done. Sometimes you don't even really have to have an injury. You don't even really have to have aggravated it. You can just have maybe strained or walked for too long, or you went for jogging, or you just knocked yourself and you didn't even think about it. Yeah. Then you just wake up with a swollen knee.
Wanjiru, he's talking about like the doctor telling him that, you know, you have to give up soccer. So how, when you realized that your child was hemophilic, I know moms are very, sometimes you just want to protect your child. You don't want them to bleed. So how did you ensure that there's a balance, that your boy can play and at the same time protect themselves, be safe from these injuries that may cause excessive bleeding?
It's a big challenge. You can tell him, don't do this, then he can come and how I cannot play ball like others.
Exactly.
You can see. No, it's a big challenge.
Yeah. You're the eldest among the hemophilia patients here. Maybe for you, was it early diagnosis? And that time, did you have the factors that you'll be talking about shortly?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you. For me, hemophilia was diagnosed when I was 1 year old.
Okay.
And luckily, because I was born in a family where my grandmother, who I say is the main carrier within our family, had lost 2 brothers during circumcision. You know, those days they used to go to the river and the procedure is done. So they didn't understand what could have happened to them. Of course, in the African setup, if they die, they say it's a weakling. So after a period, I'm born, and I manifest the same symptoms those brothers used to have. Luckily for her, she had come into contact with, about modern medicine. So she took me to, they actually brought me to Kenyatta National Hospital. And the late Professor Kasili was the one who diagnosed me to have hemophilia. Yeah. Growing up was not easy because, of course, like the patient has said, you are limited. You're told, don't do this, don't do this. So your life becomes a don't, all the time. Yeah. But because every time I get injured, I would go to Kenyatta National Hospital. I would be infused with whole blood. There was no treatment products at that point. The only treatment product that was available was whole blood. So one of the biggest challenges was also getting donors who could actually donate blood for you to be infused. But as technology improved, we realized that they could now separate blood from the fresh frozen. They could separate fresh frozen plasma from the whole blood because I only needed the fresh frozen bit. And that meant that now I had fewer admissions in terms of the period taken to be infused with whole blood. And then technology again went a notch higher. We got cryoprecipitate, and now I could be admitted for a day or 2 and get my infusion, and I go home. 2005, thereabout, we got our first factor injection. And that, I say that is a magical drug for us because I went with a bleed to Kenyatta National Hospital, and luckily I found factor that was 3 years expired. That was the best we could get at that point. And when I was infused with that factor, in less than an hour, the pain that I had was gone. Of course, we have worked with other institutions like Pharmacy and Poison Board to ensure that, and the Ministry of Health has been very supportive to ensure that we get now, on-time factor through donation that we get from WFH, and this factor is what assists us. But coming back to the life of a hemophilia boy is that we are very playful. That is natural for most boys. So our mothers tend to be very worried. In fact, I used to see my mother I used to say she's actually the one who suffers more than I do as a hemophilia patient. But what my encouragement to the young mothers or mothers who have young boys like this who are hemophilic is that allow them to play because now we have factor as donations. But then you also, you need to teach him that there are kind of sports that the boy can engage in that are not very abrasive. And therefore do not cause trauma. Like,
you can tell us like which ones?
Not like, he can actually go for swimming, he can play tennis, table tennis, he can play lawn tennis or whatever it is. But then he should avoid games that, cause trauma, like football, rugby. Those are not games for, especially rough sports. So we can actually live normal lives. Factor is there, and it can actually manage most of these conditions. So whenever you have a bleed, our insistence is that go for factor infusion on time. We haven't gotten to that point where you are prophylaxed or you are given factor before you start bleeding. because we don't have enough factor, because our government at the moment is not purchasing factor for us. In fact, that's our main appeal, that if the government of Kenya can come in handy and purchase for us factor, then we could be able to live a normal life, or normal life like any other patient.
Yeah. I want us to address the issue of... Okay. That's the point, yeah. The factor is a major concern, and we are coming back to addressing the fact that you said when we were starting the program that we only have 10 facilities, and in the country we have 45 counties. That means there are people, there are counties. I haven't heard you mention my county, Kitui, so I know there is no facility there. So we are coming to talk about how best this gap can be addressed. But let me get to Antonia. Anthony, at some point you had now to learn how to live with hemophilia. Please tell us how, because we have young boys here who are struggling and listening, and listening to all of us. There are young moms here who have young children again who are hemophilic. Maybe you can tell us now where you are, how have you been able to walk the journey and manage your situation? Growing up over the years, you tend to find that it affects you mentally, in that you realize that you're not like other children, and there's this part of you that really wants to be like other people. So number one is acceptance. Basically, if you don't accept yourself, you'll end up trying to force a life that is not compatible with who you are. Because basically, if I force and I go play soccer, I'm gonna get injured, and then it's gonna lead to disability. So most people struggle with acceptance. I personally struggle with acceptance for a very long time, and it took the intervention of now my peers in the organization and the doctors, and also my parents, because the caregivers are also very, very important in the support system. So basically, I would advise our young children is accept yourself. Once you accept yourself, you can be able to now understand how you create your own path now. Because personally now, I decided to venture into law, and I focused into studying law and became a lawyer, and live alone with sports. So anybody can become whoever they want. It's just a matter of the mindset. Accepting yourself, accepting that this is how I was born, and there's always an alternative. There's always something else I can do. Like Anthony is doing law. He doesn't have to be a footballer, or because that is limiting to him. Thank you so much for that. Let's quickly talk about the factor. You said that with the factor, children can lead a normal life. Okay. Why is it not available in the country?
Before I go to the factor, there's something Anthony has mentioned, that accepting yourself, and we have seen that patients with hemophilia, in fact, most of them are now coming from broken families, because the husband or the father could not accept the situation that the boy has bleeding disorder. So one of the things that at Kenya Haemophilia Association we are doing is to also offer what we call psychosocial support, both for the patient and for the parents. So I think that is one thing that is helping them to accept that situation, that they're in that disability fraternity. Now coming back to the factor issue, factor is very expensive. For instance, managing... And by the way, you can tell us what the factor is? Okay. Factor concentrates are it's manufactured, it's factory manufactured. It basically replaces the missing clotting factor in my body. So one of the things that you find is that in Kenya, for example, we don't have any factory that is manufacturing this, but then we have subsidiary organizations that are in this country that are actually being able to sell, or they are in the process of registering the drugs so that they can sell them locally. But factor is very expensive. To manage just a child with a 500 IU units, what we call 500 international units, which is a single dose for a simple bleed. In Kenya currently, I got from an organization that is trying to bring the product into the country, they're selling it for 50,000. Wow. For me, it means, for me to get a full dose of that, just because I have a simple bleed, it means I have to pay 300,000 just to manage a simple bleed. How many doses do you need? Well, for that simple cut, I'll need one dose, one whole dose, so which is 300,000. That's for the 50,000 is for a baby. Okay. So for me, I will need 6 times of the vials that is going for 50,000 in Kenya today.
That is what you
so
pay?
that's
That
300.
is what the patients pay?
No, at the moment, luckily, we have a partnership between World Federation of Haemophilia who are donating the factor to us. And the government came in very handy with the Ministry of Health, and they have waived the taxes that we pay. However, that MOU is coming to an end in next year, actually next year, yes. And we are worried that unless the government comes in and starts purchasing factor for us, then it would be a problem.
How do we now reach out to those who are not aware of, you know, my son is bleeding, but they don't know what hemophilia is? What is the Kenya Hemophilia Association doing?
So first I want to thank you as a media personality, because then KBC has given us a platform where we can create awareness about hemophilia. And I think it is something that, you know, all the media houses can do, just to be able to sensitize the communities that they air to, that there is treatment and management for hemophilia. So nobody needs to be left behind. So having said that, we also have events where we go out and sensitize healthcare workers, so that whenever they see these patients coming, they can be able to refer them to the right facilities where they can be able to be diagnosed and offered treatment for hemophilia. So in closing, the government also has a role. I would want one day the president of this country to say, if you have a bleeding disorder, go to Kenya Hemophilia Association and you'll get help, so that we create awareness about hemophilia and other bleeding disorders in this country.
Partnership, very important.
Exactly.
That is what the theme is about. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Maybe what are some of the things that you feel like parents should be facilitated or helped with as they are, you know, taking care of their sons or children who are hemophilic? Are they what James is saying, or do you think there's more that as a mom you can say?
You cannot stop a child to play like the others. So when you have factor, we are okay.
You're okay.
Yeah.
You will allow, you stop being paranoid and allow your children to play.
Yeah, to play.
How about you?
Yes, I think I would concur with James with the fact that the government's role is very fundamental, and as much as we have our well-wishing donors, whom let me say it out blatantly, that we never know how long their support will last, you know, and that's why it's very important that we have a local government support, that we can be able to get the factor, we can be able to have diagnostic machines, we can be able to even have the funding to be able to create awareness, advocacy, and also have a proper support system within the organization for both patients and parents.
James and the team, thank you so much. It's a pleasure that you chose KBC Studios as you celebrate, and we join the world to celebrate World Hemophilia Day. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you, and I wish you all the best. That's where we bring the show to an end. Thank you so much for watching Your Health this Sunday evening. My name is Purity Museo. Do enjoy the rest of our programming. Of course, I'll see you again next week with yet another episode of your favorite show. Bye-bye for now.